champions within the semiconductor value chain. And every time you unlock your phone, stream a video, or start a car, you rely on one tiny object, which is the semiconductor chip. And these chips are essentially the brain of modern technology, and nothing works without them. So today, our group will show how this invisible technology shapes the world, and why Europe's role is more complex than it seems. The global semiconductor value chain consists of the upstream value chain, which consists of tools, chemicals, and equipment. The midstream value chain, which are chips design and manufacturing, and downstream, those are like electronics and characterization. But why does it matter? Chips are now strategic resources for economics and security. And this leads to the question, who leads the industry? So the major players today are the US, who are in charge of the chip design, like NVIDIA, Taiwan and South Korea, who have big companies like TSMC and Samsung. Also Japan, who specializes in materials and special chemicals. And Europe is challenged because they depend on Asian manufacturing. They rely on foreign countries for design and assembly, since there are no major companies in these sectors. And decades of underinvestment slow the competitiveness. So as a result, Europe is often seen as a follower in semiconductors and not as a leader. But this view might actually be false because money will now introduce how Europe's hidden champions quietly shape the global semiconductor industry.
Okay, now let me introduce you to our hidden champions, the star of today's presentation. They are typically family-led and medium-sized companies, and unlike large multinational corporations, they are often not well known to the public. What makes them very special is that they are like world leader in their market, and they are like in a very narrow niche market. And although these niches may seem small, they are very important parts of larger value chains with specialized products or technologies that are very, very difficult to replace. And another key characteristic is their strong focus on innovation and engineering excellence. Hidden champions invest heavily in research and development, often over many years. And despite their low public visibility, hidden champions have a high global influence. This is because they often control technology bottlenecks. In other words, without their machines or processes, entire industries will struggle to function and will collapse. And this is especially relevant in the semiconductor value chain. Many hidden champions provide highly specialized materials or softwares that are essential for chip production. And on the left side, you can see a map with the hidden champions all over the world. And there is like the word Deutschland, it stands for Germany. And they have like probably the most hidden champions all over the world with 1,500 and more. And the second place, like the USA, or the third is Japan. They only have 350 or like 283. So yeah, I think that makes a lot of its impact. Now let me introduce you to the companies. The first one is ASML, a company from the Netherlands and one of the most powerful hidden champions worldwide. ASML is the world's only supplier of extreme ultraviolet lithography machines, which are essential for producing the most advanced semiconductor chips. And without these machines, modern chip manufacturing would not be possible. Each machine costs over 150 million euro, and ASML follows the razors and blades business model. And this gives ASML lots of strategic power and control over the chip industry in Europe. The company holds 100% of the ultraviolet market, and major chip markets like TSMC, Samsung, or Intel are fully dependent on its technology. And because EUV machines are extremely complex and difficult to replicate, ASML has created a global bottleneck too, and this results in a high complexity monopoly and long-term strategic influence in the semiconductor value chain. Zeiss SMT is a company from Germany, and they are like global leader in high precision optics. And the company produces mirrors and lenses with picometer level of accuracy. And Zeiss and ASML have developed their technologies together over many years. This long-term co-development has created a technological partnership that is extremely difficult to replace. And they created like a double lock-in That means that customer depends on ASML and ASML depends on size. Last but not least, we have Extron. It's also a company from Germany, and they are like a leading supplier in MOCVD and CVD deposition equipment. And the company focuses on compound semiconductors, and the materials are essential for electric vehicles, renewable energy system, and high-speed communication like 5G. And Extron also supports key European semiconductors, such as Infineon, and is closely aligned with EU's strategy on energy transition.
Okay, now we will talk about the hidden champion. We will talk about the strategic implication. So first of all, the industrial policy and strategic autonomy, then the risk of technological dependence, and the last one, future pathway, the collaboration and innovation. Okay, first of all, the industrial policy and strategic autonomy. So we would like to shed a light on the EU SHIP Act. So this is an act which is presented in the EU, and the mission is oriented industrial policy to emphasize on pilot lines and R&D, infrastructure, and to secure supply chain. So this is an act that is really important in the EU because it enables the development of new industrial companies, and it is really strong because it helps companies to develop themselves. They say that it is like a first of a kind facility to consolidate strength, emphasize strategic autonomy, resilience against geopolitical rivalities. So it enables a kind of autonomy for the Europe and to face all the competition and all the rivals from around the world. So as they say, autonomy through specialization, not replications. So the EU really wants to be autonomous, really wants to be not against, but to face all the different competitors. What about the risk of technological dependence? So we can highlight three major risks. The first one is the manufacturing concentrations. So it is true that Europe depends heavily on TSMC or Samsung for cutting-edge chips. This is kind of the single point of failures. So the main problem is that if the competitors or if the people who are working with Europe doesn't work anymore, Europe will be alone, and this is kind of the main problem because Europe cannot work alone. Then we have the broader value chain. So Europe relies on foreign actors for advanced chip design, for packaging and assembly services, concentrated in Southeast Asia, and for several critical materials, often sourced politically sensitive regions. It limits not only industrial resilience, but also foreign policy autonomy. So for this is as the first one, Europe cannot do everything, so it has to work with other countries. So this is kind of a problem if the value chain doesn't work anymore. And the last one is the geopolitical exposure. So for example, Europe's supplies world-leading equipment like EUV remain concentrated by export controls by consortia in Washington. So this is kind of the same problem. We can have tensions between all the different countries, and Europe has to be really careful and work with the strategic countries.
Okay, and then we have some future pathways that the EU can take to really establish themselves as a more strategic player in the global semiconductor industry. So the first one that we have is collaboration and innovation. And this really includes maintaining alliances more intercontinentally within the EU to really enhance and strengthen research and development efforts in Europe. And this includes strengthening technology and autonomy to really help Europe achieve specialization. And the European Semiconductor Regions Alliance is a good example of how they've achieved this so far. This includes promotion and growth and competition in their intercontinental allies, with the main goal of building a more unified and interconnected semiconductor network. And then the next one is investing more in education and startups, but specifically with the emphasis on STEM. So with education and startups specifically, this can really help to drive interest and develop pre-existing expertise. And then one example is Horizon Europe, which has sent more money towards STEM programs. And then future pathways, specifically with strengthening global partnerships, is also really important. With Taiwan specifically, the EU has some strong partnerships with Taiwan, and they're going to continue to develop this. Japan is more of an opportunity for a strategic partnership that they can continue to develop because they have a more like-minded approach to the semiconductor industry.
Yeah, okay, I would argue we learned a lot, and now we have to somehow dense it down to the learning. If you look into the news, it is quite clear we are struggling. Especially the car makers face shortages in chips, and they, as we learned in the previous presentations, are crucial. So we have to do something. It's not only the car makers, also mechanical engineering firms that really build the economic foundation of the EU. So what we can do, what have we done? On the one hand, we have those strengths. We have the hidden champions, but also, and I want to emphasize on that, it's the resilient technological ecosystem. We have firms as SAIS and RSML, and those firms are partnered for decades. So there is a strong foundation, but now it's time to leverage that, because we have this crucial dependence we somehow have to get rid of. Why is that important? It's not just some theoretical framework, it leads to action. Look at into the meeting between the German foreign minister and China. First, they rejected his visit. The second time, he barely met any state relative persons. Why? Because Germany is losing its credibility, its importance. And why this meeting for Germany and the EU as a whole was so important, rare earth, chip production, but also AI. So there's a lot on stake, so we somehow have to come up with solutions. The good news is, we have some. My plan was to pop them up separately, but I can sum that up. It's the Baltic states, for example, formed a research alignment, but also, and this is good news, the EU approves the state aid from Germany, and Germany is now investing 623 million euros in the new productions. So this is good news on one hand, but the question remains, is that enough? I would say only the future can tell. Thank you for your attention.
Any questions?
Any questions?
So, in most of your presentations, you view Europe as a integrated state, but somehow this focus more on Germany, right? So what about other like states in the EU? Do they have like these research capacity or like champions?
Since I also mentioned ASML, it's like the biggest hidden company and it's from the Netherlands. And it shows like the interconnected European world, and also in addition to that, Europe is like more connected than other countries, especially because of the European Union and also through the like geological position of it. So I think that's why we emphasize it a little bit more on Germany because of our backgrounds, but we also showed like the interconnections between those countries.
Maybe to add to that, I think the dependency on those chips is not only a German problem. If you look into Italy, for example, they also face those shortages when it comes to chips. For example, their mechanical engineering industry also highly depends on them. So I think if you try to decode the EU, it is clear to see that it's led by certain countries. So Germany plays a crucial role, but also France or Italy now emerging as a really important player in this field. For example, they also recently signed agreements to booster and foster their own industry. So it's I would argue a mix between like single country-led initiatives, but to try to leverage this extended network in the EU. And what I found most surprising, that even the Baltic states, so like not really prominent players, are also trying to catch up, which can eventually lead to a bigger movement, which is quite good to hear.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.